So yeah, I'd like to officially welcome you to this chat with Club SciWri. For those of you who don't know you, so we are joined by Antonella, who is a CEO and a co-founder of the Women's Brain Project, which is an initiative that looks at the differences in male and female brains regarding their susceptibility to various mental illnesses like Alzheimer's. So before we go into all of that, it would be great if, and we are going to discuss a wide range of topics that could get really interesting. So before we go into all of that, if you could just give us a brief introduction of who you are and what your journey has been like and what led you to the male and female brains.
So, yes, thank you for this very kind introduction. My name is Antonella Santuccione Chadha. I am a medical doctor. I am, I would say, a neuroscientist. I have had experience with patients suffering and living with brain and mental diseases. And I became very passionate to the topic of sex and gender differences, first of all, because I witnessed them while I was in a ward with my patients. And then because while I was working for a regulatory agency assessing the risk benefit of drugs to bring on the market, I have realized that in the data set I was studying, I was observing differences that were absolutely relevant to the way a drug might have been prescribed or the side effect that this drug might have been generating on a specific population. This was just the beginning. The attention was given, as you rightly said, first of all, to Alzheimer, but then it became broader. The field we started to study and to investigate. So those differences are found mainly in any disease area. If you wish, also, as we've seen with this pandemic that we're all still observing, we have noticed that there are obvious differences between men and women when it's about even an infectious disease. And we became alerted on the topic by a collaborator of ours who at the beginning of the pandemic went to China with the hope of bringing medical and scientific aid. And she warned and said, you know, I'm seeing this difference in the Chinese data set. This was just at the beginning. And then it got confirmed, of course, on the Italian data set and all over Europe, United States. And today we know that it is also like this for COVID.
So what you mean to say is this is about how males are affected more, or in the coronavirus case?
This is about the, yes, with the COVID, we realized that men have a higher mortality rate than women. And also the symptoms are much more severe in the male population. And our suspect at the very beginning was that it might have been due to a difference in the immune response and the way our, you know, genetic, our proteomics are set, how everything would have played a role to have this difference in the immune system and then influence the way we would have responded to the disease. And just, I think yesterday, it was published on Nature that this is really the case. So there was a major publication on Nature pointing to the fact that indeed it's a matter of interleukin and the inflammatory and immunomodulated response to the infection that explain these differences that we're seeing in mortality and symptomatics of the disease.
It's interesting that you bring it up because I actually plan to talk about that paper with you at the end of the conversation. So yeah, it's
I didn't
really
read the paper, so don't go into detail because I had no time.
But it is interesting that you bring it up. But let's just start with the brain for now because that is that's up your alley. So I mean, you know, the male and female brain has been a matter of immense controversy, but for the layperson, I am not a neuroscientist myself. So I know that there's size differences in the male and female brain. The male brain is slightly larger, but so is most parts of the male body. So what are the other sort of neurological, anatomical, and biochemical differences in male and female?
Well, I
want to just like raise this point over here just to clarify that whenever you talk about gender differences, or sex differences, you generally mean the biology, the biological sexes of?
Well, what we mean actually with sex differences, it is literally our DNA, you know, how we are defined as X and XY and whatever it is, either in between or even beyond. And so really the genes. When you speak about gender, it is how the society, it is nourishing you to become that type of human being or the other type of human being, and all the roles that a certain stereotype will have within a society. And even there, we might have also spectrum of differences. We are not necessarily gender fully female or gender fully male, you know. There are lots of
expressions, like there are different
yes,
expressions.
I would say so. And this is also a field where actually we don't have so many evidences because, well, actually, I wouldn't say that we don't have evidences. Evidences might exist, but I don't think that anyone ever studied them. And that's where we stand. We are in front of a new opportunity to better understand how disease might have an impact on a human being based on the genetic and based on the gender that this person has within its lifetime.
Right. Okay. So that's basically the genetics that you're talking about. So we are talking about biological sex and not how people.
Yes. Now we're talking.
Behave.
Well, you know, I will say that you have both because you have differences in the gender brain. You know, if you brainwash or if you really try to influence the brain of a person towards a certain color, for example, right? You know, girls are pink and boys are blue, then you are absolutely influencing it and gendering it in a way.
Right.
And when we speak about the sex and the biology behind it, then, you know, it's really about your genes and how your body is orchestrating the functioning about the genes and the way the genes express themselves. So to the point, to your question, are there differences between the two brains? I would say that if I have to answer now based on my knowledge and my understanding as a medical doctor looking at diseases, I would say yes. If we look at diseases, I can tell you that differences are there. If we talk about functioning, there are lots of debates and speculation about it. I am not a person who studied all these type of differences. I read about them, and I can say that we're still discovering where those differences are. I can share with you that the Women's Brain Project is working, for example, with an artificial intelligence based startup. Actually, they are an adult startup, I will put it this way. They have, for instance, a tool, it's a digital biomarker to understand how diseases might affect the brain of an individual. I won't go very much into detail because I can't disclose that much, but this digital biomarker has, of course, collected data. And now we're asking the algorithm, can you distinguish based on the data that you've collected in your population, whether you are having a male brain in front of you or a woman brain in front of you? And I'm telling you, the results are, well, I'm really keen on seeing these results published because we will have a very unbiased way of assessing those differences, and we will understand which domains might lead women to be different than men and the other way around, which domain of our functioning, of our cognition, of our motoric skills, because, you know, it reflects on behavior. The differences reflect on the way we behave after all and the way we function.
I am happy to learn about this because, I mean, if you were in America, you'd probably be canceled right now for doing something like that. But
that's the difficulty in studying these sex and gender differences, because people think that you want to amplify differences. My motto is that you will reach precision medicine, and this is about medicine. It's not about making people be different among the one another. You will reach precision medicine when the word difference will be replaced with the word characteristic. So we're going to understand the characteristic of an individual, and we're trying to make the best to then give the right treatment, the right solution at the right moment, at the right time. And to understand those differences is not to see who is better, who is worse. As we have all these jokes like, oh, man can park better the car and female can't, you know, it's not about that. It's about really understanding those differences to make better medicine, better care for the patients, better, you know, I can tell you that according to the General American Office 2001 document, dated 2001, it's the last one of such kind that was generated. 10 drugs were withdrawn from the market. 8 of those, it's because they had major side effects on the female population. So this means that we had more problems in the female population. People were in hospital, people might have died even. I don't know now the details of each drug, but to withdraw a drug from the market, it's something big. So something big must have happened. We have paid for development of this drug, and all the investment we did in terms of resources got wasted because, you know, it didn't serve the purpose. And the poor person that maybe would have benefit of this drug, because I'm sure that in some people it worked, otherwise it would have not been approved, they don't have the drug anymore in the pharmacy. So it's a very complicated circle of events that, if are not really well understood from the beginning onwards, trying to do this precision medicine, it's just going to cost us more. It's not sustainable. So what we're trying to say is that precision medicine, starting from studying sex and gender differences, and then of course going beyond, because there is ethnicity, there is geography, there is the wealth status of a human being. I mean, if you're richer or if you're poor, your health will not be the same, and that's a matter of fact. So by studying all these things, thanks to AI, because I think that we as humans, we can't digest all this enormous type of information and making sense out of those. So I think that then we will really reach a more sustainable way of providing care and doing medicine and have a sustainable healthcare system.
So this is where the Women's Brain Project comes in. So it's a good segue into what we want to really talk about in detail. So yeah, so the question would be then, what inspired you to build something like this, and what does the Women's Brains Project exactly do in terms of like partial scientific clinical research or outreach and advocacy, and what are the ranges of activities that you're involved in?
So we started among 3 friends. It was about 3 ladies speaking about sex and gender differences on the river, no, on the, how do you say, on the side of the lake, of the Zurich lake. I live in Zurich, I'm in Switzerland. And our kids were pulling left and right because they wanted to go home. And we were saying, you know, I heard from some prominent American ladies that Alzheimer's is more of a female disease. And we said, okay, let's go and check, because me as a doctor, you know, I'm not very much aware of this. Me as a scientist, the other colleagues said, I never heard of. So we went and started to do a big revision of the literature, and we published our first work. So what we do, to your question, we basically generate evidences that will help scientists, drug developers, and mainly patients to understand how a disease works and how to improve the clinical development to bring a solution for the patient. Also the digital solution for the patients, because most of the medical achievement of the future will be digitalized. So we will have lots of digital solutions that we might not even think of today. And if we start to talk about this sex and gender bias even in digital health, then we can pave the way to a better outcome for the future. And how we do it, as we said, we really do science. We just do meta-analysis. We partner with the other organization, with the universities, with the even drug developers or biotech to make sense of their own data. We have a team, now we're around, I think, 40 people. I've lost a bit control because the power of our organization is that most of the people work pro bono and they are empowered. They lead their own chapter. It is therefore growing and growing. This was a growth we had in less than 4 years. So from 3 people, then we had a 4th senior expert who advised us a lot, who was, you know, the diversity in our team, it's not only about cultures, who are really diversified because we have people from all over the world, but it's also about age, you know, we have very, very young people, which are 20 plus, and then we had our senior mentor was nearly, I think it was 60 plus. And so this brings a lot of different way of thinking, right? Because you have the seniority and you have the enthusiasm and you have, it's all a nurturing and pollination from one another, you know.
It's true diversity. It's that this is
Yes,
true
it is.
diversity,
It
not
is.
just based on sex and race and
No,
blah, blah, blah.
It's just everything. And I adore to work with very young people as much as I adore to work with people who have having more experience, because these allow us to have a full overview and robustness to make the right choice for the right audience, because maybe you have to speak a different language if you're targeting a person which is above 40, 50, whatever, and you need to adapt a different language to a person who is maybe much younger.
Right. So then, and so what is, if you just give an example of a single small project that you have undertaken and finished? So
well,
that
I
we have an
mentioned to
idea.
you the one with the AI initiative. Then we are working with a university in Dubai, for example, to understand sex and gender differences on the brain of people who have mild cognitive impairment, whether there are any morphological differences that might justify that, correlated to neuroimaging, to biological fluid biomarkers, and the genomics of the patient. So it's a big data set that we are, again, starting with artificial intelligence, actually. Then we are working on a piece we're doing the forum. I forgot to tell you the major things. We are doing the forum, which is going to be on the 19th and 20th of September, but actually it starts even before, because what we did, we had to move virtual. So we have a platform where our speakers already before upload their speech, and you as a participant can already watch at your best convenience, at your best time, those talks which are already available. And then we will have a live event really on the 19th and 20th. And for instance, I give you what we did. We're organizing, and this is a big achievement. We're doing really a lot of things, as you might see. I can go from left to right. Before the forum, additionally to the forum, on the 17th of September, we are going to hold a roundtable with regulators from all over the world who will come and teach us how they are approaching the problem of sex and gender differences when they assess drugs. So the host of the event is going to be the Food and Drug Administration. The Food and Drug Administration has a dedicated office, which is called the Women's Office, and it's tackling the problem of sex and gender differences in medicine. So they will come and they will showcase their best practice to the other regulators, and then a conversation will be established. So this is another type of activity. This is not only advocacy, this is really bringing the people together around the table and let them exchange and ameliorate and grow and address the issue that needs to be addressed. Another thing, for example, another project that we do, it's about the Be Brain Powerful campaign. This is actually an American initiative that has been kicked off already a while ago, and we have been involved in bringing the Be Brain Powerful campaign in Switzerland. So it's it's meant for the lay public, and we teach how to take care of your mental health and how to engage in activities or exercise or mental training that can keep your brain fit. And I think this is very important because we are the owner of our brain. And as much as you have to train your muscle, you have to train your brain. And I think this is also very important for future generation. I am trying to teach future generations that at the end of the day, one of the most precious things we really have, it is our brain. So we really have to keep good care of what we do for it. And yeah.
I mean, yeah, because everything that exists is in our mind, essentially. So, you know, without the brain, nothing exists, essentially.
We don't function. I mean,
yeah.
Unfortunately, that's the case.
But so you said that, like, to train your brain, I mean, there has been, over the years, I mean, there have been several, you know, companies that have developed programs like riddles or, you know, difficult mental challenges that they say would sort of, if you do that continuously, it will train your brain. But then I read somewhere that those were not really helpful to do anything to your brain. Those was just fun challenges. So how do you really train your brain?
Well,
Apart from reading, I think reading really helps.
Reading, it helps. Learning another language. And I will tell you what, I think that those who can play an instrument are the lucky ones.
Good.
I had patients that were fully demented, unfortunately, which means they didn't know where they were, they didn't know what time it was. But what surprised me was to see that they were still able to dance. So they would have really done steps, like, you know, a valser, you know, the Austrian valser, or I don't know, they could dance, and surprisingly, they were still able to play an instrument without having the written piece of music in front of their eyes. For me, that was, I mean, not all of them, but really few of them who could play, they were really still able to perform. And for me, this is really showing that music is certainly one way. You have to move a lot. I think that if you keep walking, if you keep exercising, that's really, really important for the brain and the functionality of the brain. I think the food that we do consume, it is certainly another bad or good fuel of the brain. We can choose. We can choose what we want to eat and how we want to nourish our body, but also our brain. And social interaction, it seems that one of the key factors to stay mentally fit till the end of your days, it is if you are really socially engaged. So the elderly people that are the best performer are those who still have a purpose in their life, who are really engaged, and maybe they have children to take care of, or of course you need to be healthy. That's might be also a bias towards the fact that you're healthy, you keep doing. I'm not saying that that's not a possible reason, but evidences point to the fact that certainly social interaction helps you a lot. And these are also in the guidelines of the WHO to prevent dementia to occur at the end of your life. So they recommend to move, they recommend to keep training your brain, be socially engaged, etc., etc.
So the myth of the lone troubled genius is not really accurate.
I don't think so. I will say not. I know that if you speak about challenges, the biggest challenge I have, it's every time I enter the living room of my father-in-law, who always wants to do maths with me. So as soon as I enter, he says, "So Antonella, how much is it? A to the second plus B to the," you know, so that's my challenge. I'm done with that.
So, I mean, right, as you mentioned your, I mean, in this case, you know, in the COVID crisis and people are forced to stay, users say that social interaction is important. And we have, it seems like we're having the minimum amount of social interaction. Everything is virtual, which is a form of social interaction, but not really the real thing.
I
so
tell
what
you,
do you do here?
We as adult, healthy subjects do suffer, but we do not suffer that much. I think that those who are really suffering at most are the children and the elderly, and those who have already mental issues. And that's because for a normal psychological development, psychophysical development, I don't know if you can say this in English, but to develop properly your person from a, how to say, mental health perspective, but also your body, you need this type of interaction with your peers. I mean, for a teenager, for example, to spend time with the peers, it's a physical necessity for developing further. So that's, social isolation is nothing good for them, right? And the same is true for elderly people. I have to share with you that due also to my background being a doctor, I had many friends who told me that one of their dear family member, who maybe was an old person, fully decompensated during this crisis, and they had became depressed or they just start to develop symptoms of cognitive decline very, very rapidly because the routine that they've had during the day went completely disrupted. So it's about an elderly person who used to go to the local bar to speak with their friends and get a coffee and then maybe going to the church or maybe going to a temple. You know, they had a routine during the day which got completely canceled. And the same is a bit true with kids, you know, and with teenagers, I would say. So yes, this COVID, it's a big challenge for each of us. And I hope we will find soon a solution, frankly spoken.
Yeah, so you are a mother of two. So in that aspect, and also being a medical doctor and a specialist in the brain, I would probably now like to bring up, I guess, the elephant in the room in this case, which is
Please.
social media. So social media has been a thing for the last 10 years, and this is the generation called, so I'm a millennial, I guess, but Gen Z, which is the new generation that's coming up, they are really hooked into social media. And I think there have been data by John Haidt. I don't know if you're familiar with Jonathan Haidt's research from New York University, who has done research saying that the percent of depression in teenagers have risen to like 40 to 70% in the last few years, like 5 to 10 years. But interestingly, it's been twice, I mean, women, like teenage girls, are twice as likely to be affected by depression and anxiety than boys are. And he links it to the rise of like Instagram, where you need likes and adulations and you get bullied online.